So to start teaching your dog the engage, disengage game, you're going to need a dog who is ready to work with you and you know the distance from their trigger at which they can potentially look away on their own. If we need to help them in the beginning, I'll explain the very first steps, but typically I jump kind of somewhere in the middle, but it depends on the dog. So for this example, this is going to be the trigger. This could be a dog, a cat, a bike, a squirrel, anything that your dog reacts to. But what we want to start teaching the dog is how to look away from this and look in our direction, eventually up towards our face. You're also going to need a marker word or a clicker. So you can use the words yes, good, or yup. Pick one and be consistent with it and always follow your word with a treat. So what we're going to do is we're going to get Mango looking at his trigger here, and then the moment he looks away, he's going to get a yes and a cookie for that. Then as we go, it's going to go from looking at the trigger, looking away to wherever, then looking at the trigger, looking towards me, looking at the trigger, looking at the upper half of my body, then looking at the trigger and looking towards my face. Then, after we've gotten about that far, we're going to start decreasing the distance over time. This is not a game you want to rush. You want to make sure that you're going nice and slow and that your dog's showing confidence at each level and is not showing any fear, anxiety, stress, anything having to do with your trigger that could cause some adverse effects in your training. So it'll look something like this. Yes, good boy. So it might be hard for you guys to see his eyes. Yes. So something as simple as a little eye glance away is perfect. Yes. Good. So looks at his trigger. Yes. Looks towards me. Looks towards the trigger. Yes. Looks towards me. Now this is a very benign example of this. Typically what's going to happen is your dog will just turn away in any direction, and you can mark that in the beginning and over time waiting for a bit more. Your treat placement is also important. So instead of giving your reward down here, give it up here so you're automatically setting your dog up to look at your face a bit more. So looks at trigger, yes. Looks towards me, it's a yes and a treat. Yes. Now I didn't mark his looks away towards Nelly because we'd already been at the point where he needed to look towards me. So he was just waiting to see what he would offer. Now in a real life scenario, if this was a very intense trigger for the dog, I probably would mark any sort of look away because it is showing he's able to disengage from the thing. But in this scenario, this is fairly easy. So looks up, yes, looks towards me. And now I'm slightly increasing the difficulty by keeping this crinkling. Yes, good boy. This thing has squeakers in it? Oh, it does. Yes. And then deep up. Yes. And wait for your dog to do it on their own as long as they're showing that they are not too uncomfortable. Yes. Because we do want the dog who ultimately will choose to disengage from a trigger on their own so that you're not always having to cue your dog. If you're always having to cue your dog, then they aren't really learning anything. They're learning to be dependent on you instead of realizing that the thing is not so scary even if you're not there. Yes, good boy. You're being a very good girl, my friend. Good girl. Yes. So as you go again, kind of your basic progression is going to be far enough away from the trigger that your dog can disengage from it on their own. That may be a football field length, it may be 10 feet, just kind of depends on where your dog's at. Then what we're gonna start working on is marking the moment the dog sees the trigger and looks away. So the moment they turn their head slightly, yes and cookie, or good and cookie, or yelp and cookie, or click and cookie. Then after we've done that, our dog is very quick to disengage from the thing, just to any direction. We're gonna start increasing our criteria. So then it's gonna be looking at this, looking towards me in my general direction, gets his marker and his reward. Then it's gonna be looking at his trigger, looking up at the upper half of my body, looking at his trigger, looking at my face. Then once he's very confident with that skill, we're gonna start decreasing our distance over time. Ultimately, what we want in our dog is all different. So some dogs will need to have them able to walk on the same sidewalk if we're in a busy metropolitan kind of area. Other dogs, we're going to be able to cross the street forever, so our distance may differ there. Also, the intensity at which the trigger started at is going to make a difference in how quickly you proceed. So if at any point your dog is showing any fear, anxiety, reaction to things, go back, make it easier for them, help them get success again before you continue on. Because you don't want to put in a bunch of hard work in your training just to undo it accidentally and push your dog too far too fast. So let me know if you have any questions with this, and we will go from there. Very good dogs. Get it. Get it. Yeah. You're a silly boy.